All right, Emily, I am super excited to have you on the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast. You're somebody I watch from afar through the LinkedIn channels, the social media channels. I've been following this pathway through your career. We met probably a decade and a half ago, almost. It seems like. And I've just kind of stayed in touch from a distance, and I'm excited to have you on here because I think you really represent, in my mind anyway, what it means to be an intentional leader, really serving the industry. So thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's great to see you again.
Yeah. All right. Opening question. What does it mean to you to be intentional?
I think it's just about being human.
Mm.
You know, I laugh a lot. I think of the quote from The Godfather, "It's not personal, it's business." And I really think like that's one of the worst business quotes ever used. And first of all, if we're using a mob boss as a point of inspiration, we probably need to revisit, our moral compass. But it's just simply not true. I mean, we spend so much of our time working. I've said before, probably some of the best advice I got early on was from my dad, who told me, find something you love doing it because you're going to spend most of your life doing it. And, and I've been very lucky to have a career that I've really, for the most part, enjoyed along the way, and really like what I do. But that makes it also personal. And at the end of the day, we're not all robots, we're people. And, what's going on in our personal life, intentionally or unintentionally impacts our day-to-day work as well. So I think just really focusing on how to be a good human um, is really probably the most simplest way to look at it.
I love it. I love bringing it down to the simple, just it's human nature.
It really is.
Right. It really is human nature. I talk a lot in our programs when we bring people together, and I introduce it like this. I say, hey, we've as far as I know, right? Like I get one chance to walk around in the Mark Jewell suit.
Yeah.
Right. Like you get one chance to walk around in the Emily suit, right? I mean, it's like, this is the one I got, love it or
Yep.
hate it, but it's the one I got. Right. And I get one chance, and, like I haven't found the expiration date.
There we go.
Right. And so, why do I allow myself to spend any more time, surviving in it than I have to? Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, so just coming back to that human nature, like just being intentional because it's a human experience. I love your answer. So it's perfect. I want to talk a little bit about the business and talent in the business. I know a lot of organizations across the broad scope of agribusiness are struggling with talent retention today. So what are you guys doing at Inari to make it a great place to work?
I think Inari has been really good at being intentional about the culture, but
Mhm.
it's very genuine because it's not just the leadership saying, this is the culture we're going to have, now act accordingly. Because I've definitely worked at those companies where, you're told what the culture is, and then you kind of, look at your colleagues side-eyed and go, is that really where we work? Um,
Mhm.
but one of the things that I've really enjoyed about Inari is, the values were identified by the employees themselves, and that was something that took place before, I joined. And, they had a time where they, asked everybody, do you still feel like this is true? And they felt like they were still true and added to it a little bit.
Mhm.
But, the giving people the space to kind of, I think, define that culture and to, embrace it. I think that's what's made it. I mean, it's just genuine. And I think when we have people come into it, they see that and they experience that, and they realize it's not just, we have the words on the wall, but it's not just the words on the wall. And I think that makes a big difference. We're not afraid to have, open conversations and tough conversations when they need to happen. Um, but I think, letting employees can be a part of that process is really important because it makes it more real. They feel more connected. Um, and as are recruiting even for new employees, and they come in and they see it and they feel it. And I hear a lot from people like, I want to be a part of something like this. I think it comes out even in how we share Inari on social media. I've had a number of people reach out to me about job openings, and really it's been, the position is interesting, but I would really like to come and work for Inari because they see something that they like and they want to be a part of.
Yeah. And it actually goes in, you're going all the way into my next question, which was going to be around culture. How do you create that culture? And so I love that you guys are bringing people into the mix. Like, so the people had a little bit of a say, a little bit more of a tactical question, but was there, to your knowledge, and you weren't there at the time, but do you know, like, was there like an intentional process behind it? Was this, they brought together a committee, right? I'm thinking about people like, how do you make that real, if other organizations wanted to adopt something similar?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So Inari is like coming up on 6 years old. So we are a young company and had the benefit of being able to do this, I think, right from the start.
Yep.
So I think there was a little bit of a process, and at the time, most of the employees were involved in it because at the time there wasn't hundreds and hundreds of employees. I think it'd be a little bit more challenging and probably have to be a little bit more structured if we were to even do it today, as we're approaching 300 employees. And I imagine even more challenging, when you look at, corporations that are thousands and thousands of employees. You know, so I think it's something that, hopefully it's there from the start. But, even going from, a company that was, less than 100 to, getting close to 300 in a pretty short time span.
Yeah.
We're definitely have gone through some growing pains. And I think, being open to having conversations about, what's going on with the company, and allowing people to express their feelings. And they might not always like the answers, but I think giving a forum where you can talk honestly about it has helped. But I mean, I'd be lying if I say, we're doing this perfectly. Like, we've definitely
It's
reached
all sunshine and rainbows all the time, right? Around there.
Yeah.
Like, it's, we're gene editing, in great culture into the workplace.
Yeah. If only CRISPR could solve all of our problems. No, I mean, we're going through some growing pains, and, we're working on how to do change management better, and reached out to external resources to help us work through it, because we're trying to balance the fact that, frankly, part of what made our culture was, it was a small company, and we're not going to be a small company forever. So how do you work through that? And how do you keep the pieces that are important and stay true to, the core values, but allow that growth to happen? And it's, it's a balance. And, I always use the word balance carefully, because people always talk about work-life balance.
Right.
And they think of the balance as like being a perfect balance. And I always say it's more like a teeter-totter. The balance shifts back and forth, and there has to be give and take, and
I think people, sorry to jump in, but I think people have an unrealistic idea, right, of what culture really is. Like, culture is, I mean, yes, it's something that can be in a petri dish and you can watch it and observe it, but it's constantly changing, even at that, right? I mean, it's just something that's constantly, anybody who listens to more than 2 episodes of this will probably get tired of hearing this quote at some point, but it's going to come up because this is what the podcast is about. Danny Meyer, who started Shake Shack and a number of other food, restaurants. I heard him at Tony Robbins. He spoke, and he said, and he's renowned for building culture, great cultures inside the organizations that he has built. And he says, culture is like taking care of a newborn. You have to feed it. You have to feed it 12 times a day. And when it craps its pants, you damn well better change it.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, right? I mean, it takes
Yeah.
intentional leadership. And this is why I created a podcast about intentional leadership, is to help leaders in agribusiness, which is something I care deeply about, that you and I care deeply about this industry. And I see a lot of people just really struggling, right? I see
Yeah.
people looking for the magic formula for building culture. And they're like, hey, what do we have to do to get, and to get these people doing more, right? Selling more, operating better, getting along, whatever the case is. And they're looking for them, just like everything in life these days, they're looking for the magic pill.
Yeah.
Right.
What's the easiest, shortest, way to get there? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you've already lost.
And that's why this intention thing is so important to me, because like I know all the times in life that I get the most resentful is always because of the times in life I'm the least intentional. So I'm super curious, like, what are companies doing to create, that culture intentionally? And what a cool like case study, because you can see it, it's only 6 years old, right? So we can actually like pull apart the different things. And then fast growth, which is like, yeah, I mean, that's like, how do you maintain certain parts of the culture, but then allow you to edit in new pieces? Because a 300 person company is not a 50 person company anymore, right? It's just different. The lines of communication are different. So
Yeah, I mean, it started in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and and we have 3 locations now. I mean, we have an
yeah,
office in Ghent, Belgium, and West Lafayette, Indiana, and West Lafayette's quickly becoming our largest and is our fastest growing.
wow, really,
So there's all these dynamics at play. But I have to give a good deal of credit to Ponzi Trevisfavet. She's our CEO.
yeah,
And, to my earlier point of what does intentional mean, it's just being human. And
yeah,
she is one of the most real human people I've ever seen, experienced firsthand in a CEO role. She's um, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who works harder. But she's also just has very real conversations with people, and you know and she recognizes the importance of being human, and she definitely shows that she's just a human as well. And you know I think that also helps people, because she believes in what we set out for in terms of the culture, and she leads by example. So I think that also helps, where it doesn't feel like lip service.
yeah.
It you know you're experiencing it.
Well, you led with the word genuine, right? And so, and if the genuineness is coming through in the culture, I mean, that always stems back to the chief.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it has to come from the top down. That's by rules in building cultures. So it speaks to, and I'm thinking about doing another, like a season maybe after this one, where I just interview CEOs from around the industry, and I definitely want to get her on. So if she's open
Wonderful.
to that, I think that would be fantastic, because I've watched some of her videos and I'm like, okay, wow, like this is really, really cool. So
Yeah.
all right, but I want to talk about you. So so we're talking about Emily here today. So what's the biggest hurdle you have had to overcome as a leader?
I think it's coming into an existing team as their leader. And I've had that
Yeah.
experience a couple times now, and it's it's interesting, because a lot of times, especially when you're coming into a brand new role, you're excited about your new job, and your mentality is like clean slate. This is all new, it's exciting, and I can't wait to learn. And I've definitely taken for granted that the people that I'm coming into have the baggage, that they've been there for whatever set period of time. And maybe they had a leader that they really liked, that they lost. Maybe they had a bad leader that put the team in a bad place. Like, there's just so much you don't know until you really dig in and find out like what's going on. Or I kind of got made leader of a group that wasn't really a team before, and so all of a sudden it's like, oh, hold on, so now we're doing what, and who are you, and why are you here? And what does this mean for me?
Right. Yeah.
So,
It's a subculture within the culture of the organization, right? So,
oh
you
yeah,
as and so you're walking into this, like, it's almost like, okay, this is a terrible analogy, but it's like if you adopt like a pet from the shelter. I mean, it has habits and things that you didn't teach it. It is now, it's your responsibility.
you're like, all right, so, and um, and I've had some very honest conversations with people. I'm like, I want to hear from you. I want to know what's going on with you. And I understand you have a lot of questions, and I'm probably not going to be able to answer all of them today.
Yeah.
But like, I want to know what they are, and we'll work on getting the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's been, going back to my first point of just being human. I mean, recognizing that, what other people are going through and understanding where they're at, and where they want to go. I always ask people when I first start, managing someone directly is, tell me what you want. Like, what do you want out of your career?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to go? What do you want to learn? Like, where do you feel like you could really excel? Because when you can help people do the things they want to do, you're going to get better work out of them, and they're going to be happier. And sometimes there's been situations where, we kind of realize to do what you really want to do probably means not doing this job. And maybe it's, or maybe it's not being at this company. And I think you have to be okay with helping people find their best path, because, you hate to lose great talent, but if somebody isn't where they need to be in their journey, you're never going to get the best version of them. And, you're not going to win as a company having that person at position, and that person is probably eventually going to leave anyways. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, I think having to create a place where hopefully they can thrive and get everything they want, but
Yeah.
being real enough to realize when that's just, not true, and letting them spread their wings where they need to do that.
Well, I 100% agree, and I've said many, many times over the years that I think leaders have a moral obligation to create a space, to create a culture within which people can thrive.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's just helping them identify that this may not be the right space, the right culture, the right team. Maybe there's somewhere else in the organization. Maybe there's a different organization, and that doesn't have to be bad or wrong. I mean, that can be very encouraging and empowering, and you can build bridges this way. I mean, excuse me, but I think the most important thing that I want leaders to understand more is being really intentional coming into that. Like, I see so many people not, and they wait for that problem to figure itself out.
Yeah.
And then it's so much harder to fix later on.
Yeah.
I'm going to say
Yeah, no.
something. I'm going to use a really terrible example, because this obviously does not apply necessarily to the corporate space, but I study the Old Testament pretty, like, I'm reading it cover to cover right now, and I'm going through, and it really is. It's the greatest culture book ever written, because it's very, it almost reads like an HR manual, right, for the Jewish people. As they start to go into and cross the Jordan, they're given specific instructions about what to do when they take over the land, and like what to do when they take over a town.
Yeah.
And it's really terrible stuff. um, so we obviously can't do those kind of things. I mean, it really is like, I mean, you take the people out, right? You get rid of the people, you get rid of all the livestock, don't keep anything, burn the houses down, right? I mean, it's really, and we have different words for this today. But it
I've
was,
seen leaders do that. I've seen, leaders come into positions and be like, I want a clean slate. I'm gonna get rid of
exactly.
people. I'm gonna get rid of all of the agencies I've worked with, and we're starting over from scratch.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe that's needed, but how do you know before you've actually started doing anything? And like,
Right.
there is value in historical knowledge, even if was something that was done wrong,
Mm-hmm.
then you know why it didn't work. but like to just come in and completely, try and clear this
Raise it to the
plate.
ground. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean, that's one approach, I guess.
Right. So it's super interesting to me, right? And that was how you had to do it, right? Otherwise, they would be tempted to worship idols, right, instead of worship God. That was the whole
Yeah.
point. And so I understand that, and just leveraging that like as the example, right? But from that, right, I learned a lot about intention and like and really being intentional. And we can use very much more advanced, and more emotionally and intellectually advanced as we are today than we were 3,000-4,000 years ago, right? As a species, hopefully, maybe sometimes we're not, but when we come into a team like you're talking about, and this is such a challenge for so many people, right? Just really being intentional and taking time to sit down and really like, I mean, almost interview them, right? I mean, just get to know like that person. Coming back to the first thing you said, which is intention is human, right?
Yeah. I'm
Just
going to
see.
quote Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, and that was a great, a great line. And I do think about that a lot. And, uh, another one that I like is not Ted Lasso, but just, assume good intentions. I find so often
Mhm.
like, and I think it's just the reality of, work and stress and, everyone's trying to get things done. And then when you hit a roadblock, you're like, who did this to me and why? Um, but it's, while you're asking the why, you're looking more to make an accusation than to find out like what's going on. And,
Mhm.
so I find like if you can be curious and ask questions and try and ask them without judgment and, assume that people have good intentions, you know, everyone I find really is just trying their best to like get through the day most days. And if you remember that, uh, you can usually get to a better place faster.
Mhm. Yeah, I love it. And great job bringing in the Ted Lasso quotes. I think this we have a project. This is like um, um, an important, not urgent project that we have like on our list for 20.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be a 24 thing. We want to go through and rewatch all the Ted Lasso, like season by season,
Yeah.
and watch all the episodes and like pull out the leadership lessons and then create like a Ted Lasso leadership playbook.
Oh, that'd be great.
I
No,
think that would go over really
I
well.
think everyone should, uh, everybody in a leadership position should watch at least a few episodes because,
I agree.
um, as I said, the mob boss was not a great example of leadership. I think there's a lot of points that I found even watching that where you kind of like step back and like do a moment of self-evaluation, like,
Yeah.
okay, I could probably learn something
Yeah.
there.
Well, I mean, we've gone mob boss, Old Testament, and then we went to Ted Lasso. So I think we're improving
We've covered it all.
as we go. So okay, what's been your biggest win as a leader? What's a win that you really claim? You're like that goes on the mantle.
Uh, I really think it is, and this is going to sound, I'm sure a little cheesy, but it's been seeing the people on my team succeed. And, I know what I'm capable of. And, I've been around long enough to have had some wonderful highs and some, pretty low moments too. But when you've seen someone on your team really like grow and accomplish something that, especially if they thought they couldn't do it, or you knew it was a challenge for them, and having them have that moment of realization of like, no, I can do the hard stuff too. And it's good to challenge myself. And, I got through this and it was totally worth it. Um, that's when I really enjoy being a leader. And that's when I feel like if I can help somebody else reach, reach their high moments and, figure out their best career path. To me, those are the best wins, and
I
staying in
love
touch,
it.
with people that I've, worked with or, have served as, a direct manager for, and watching them, LinkedIn is great for that, keeping in touch with people even from afar. It's been exciting to see some of them grow into their careers.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love that answer. And it's just, like it says, you'll know a tree by its fruit, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's so telltale. If somebody can come in and talk a good game about leading people and building teams and building an organization. And I'm more interested in hearing about who did you help create, who did you help, along in their career. I get
Yeah.
much more joy these days at our events, like watching our other facilitators run the event than I even do from being in the front of the classroom.
Yep.
I'm with
So
you.
I compare leadership, a lot to being a parent. And I think at times people take that the wrong way. Like, oh, you're saying, you have children. I'm like, well, there's days where it feels like that. But,
Yeah.
a couple things. You don't realize how much your parents didn't actually know until you become a parent yourself. And that's kind of like leadership. Like, there's an element of there's stuff we make up as we go. And we're all trying to figure it out. There isn't no, there's lots of books that tell you how to be a better leader, just like there's lots of books that tell you how to be a better parent, but there's not really a manual of like, this is exactly how it's done. Uh,
Right.
but, I think good leaders also, care a lot about the people that they work with. And, you have that sense of pride when you see them succeed, and, and you want to encourage that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I love it. So to just kind of sticking with that theme, talk to me a little bit about vulnerability and how do you leverage that and being able to create intention? Because there is, we can go too far with it. We can share too much. I've certainly been guilty of that, and had that come back to bite me. But then I've also really won in some cases by
Yeah.
sharing what's real. So talk to me a little bit about that.
I've always told my teams, like, I'm going to call a spade a spade. And when something sucks, I'm going to say it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in those positions where I've had a leader been like, it's all like, everything's great, everything's wonderful, rainbows, sunshines, unicorns, like, don't think about the bad things. And, and you're sitting in a big pile of poo and you're like, really? Right now you're telling me this?
Yeah.
So to me, it's about being honest about where things are at. And, because like I said, we can say something sucks and then we can figure out how we're going to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't acknowledge the truth of the matter, like, it's really hard to get beyond it. And I think also not having to be perfect all the time. And I'm sure anybody who would tell you that they've worked for me would tell you I'm far from perfect. But, you know, I think also, not being afraid to share when something hasn't gone well, because I think success isn't about never failing. It's about always getting back up.
Yeah, I love that.
And, I have had, a couple moments in my career where it was, they were like, I wanted to give up, or, I was mad as hell about something. Um, or, something just didn't go the way I wanted it to go. And I was really frustrated. Um, and I can look back and realize, like, those were big moments of growth for me, because I got beyond them and I got back up and I didn't give up. And sometimes it took, a great leader standing next to me saying, you're not stopping now. Dust yourself off, get over it, and go try again. And, and sometimes it was giving that, speech to myself. But I think in showing that vulnerability to others, it's like, I've made a mistake, or I just made a mistake, and here's what I'm doing about it, or here how we're going to fix it, or here how we're going to move beyond. It also creates a space where they feel safe doing the same thing, because I can't help my team get past, like, problems or issues if they don't feel safe coming to me with them. And, an issue can quickly become a crisis when they hide it from you, and it's like, oh, well, like, we don't want to let her know it's bad. We're going to just keep spinning our wheels and trying to fix this. And it's like, no, like, you gotta like come to me and let me help be part of the solution. And having that safe space, I think is really important, but it starts with being vulnerable enough that they feel like, you know, she understands and we can talk to her about these things. And, you know, she might be frustrated that it happened, but, you know, she's going to support us in getting through it.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. Creating that place, right? That safe space where it is honest, right? It can be honest. It can be both honest and safe.
Yeah,
At the
exactly.
same time. And that's, you know, to me, intentional leaders really work to curate that, right? It's a curation process, not just a creation process. So fantastic. All right. So in addition to, I mean, having, you know, a great job and being a team leader, I mean, you're also a team leader at home. Talk to us a little bit about your family and like, how do you, I don't like the word balance. We talked about that earlier, right?
Yeah.
As it pertains to the work-life thing as well. To me, it's all a blend, right?
Yes.
But how do you keep that blend working?
It is a team sport. So we have two young boys, and my husband also works full time and has a very successful career. And, you know, where we kind of find the balance is, you know, recognizing when one of us is in a place where we might need to lean in a little bit more to work, and then the other one leans in a little bit more to family, and vice versa. And we've definitely had that pendulum swing, you know, back and forth through the years. I am probably a little bit spoiled in the fact that my husband and I are in the same profession. So we actually met working together.
Okay,
And
nice.
um, and so having a partner who, you know, 100% understands my job, you know,
Mhm.
and that, you know, we've definitely had pitfalls where we spend too much home time talking about work because it's
Of
easy to
course.
dive in. So we've had to set up some boundaries there, but
Yeah.
um, you know, just having that level of understanding and, you know, again, uh, having those open, honest conversations when, you know, things aren't going well, and just recognizing that, you know, we're both trying our best to make it work. And
Mhm.
sometimes we're really good, and sometimes there's rough nights.
Yeah.
But, you know, as long as the good outnumbers the bad, you know, I think it's a win.
Right. Yeah. No, my wife and I have a policy around here. It's called keep the energy clean.
Yeah.
And that sounds nice. But sometimes it's not, because sometimes
Yeah.
what's required to clean up the energy is not
Yeah.
fun.
Well, and I mean, and we both, you know, have had moments where, like, you know, we try to leave work at work, but, you know, as I said
Yeah.
before, it's personal. And, you know, we've had days where it's like, I've come home and said, listen, like, I need like an hour. Like, I can't be a good mom right now because the
Mhm.
smallest little thing is going to set me off, and I don't want to
Mhm.
take out my bad day on my poor children. So I'm going to
Mhm.
need, like, it needs some decompression time.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, and he's done the same, and we're very much acknowledged, like, okay, yep, I see that in you right now. And everyone's doing for the better. So I mean, it kind of
Yeah.
comes back to the same thing about, you know, being a little bit vulnerable at times, and
Mhm.
not being afraid to ask for, you know, what you need. And sometimes that's asking for what you need out of your partner too, to say like, hey, I need help here. You know, this is what's going on the home front, and,
Yeah.
you know, this is what's needed as well. And we're
Absolutely.
also insanely blessed to have my parents who tend to be our backup, especially, you know, I've had crazy travel schedules, and they they are a wonderful support system, and fabulous grandparents to dive in when needed. So I'm very, very thankful for my parents as well.
I'm with you on that one. We moved ours right in. We moved Christine's mom. Like, she lives upstairs, and thank God the laundry just magically gets folded, and it's wonderful. So not everybody is that lucky. And
No.
and it actually works for us. It works, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so my wife is Italian, and so I mean, this is like an expectation. This was written into the contract when we met. I had no idea that was coming. I was part of, like, not only do you get one, you get two women living with you. So, but it's, it's been fantastic because at least somebody's there to help out with the dogs, or
Yeah.
whatever, to dog sit or something if we have to both go travel
Yeah.
or whatever. So totally understand. But to bring it back to that, like, there's those moments in life, right, where it just feels like we're not having it all together. Um, one of the things that we talk a lot about in our work, it's called the law of infusion. And the law of infusion states that I can only infuse others to the degree that I first infuse myself. I see a lot of unintentional leaders sacrificing all of them for everybody else, and then nothing left in the tank for them, and really not much left over for others. And that's when the conflict usually arises, right? Is when I don't have the capacity. So, what do you do to keep your energy up and stay productive and keep things moving forward? What's important for you?
I am a Peloton junkie.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
no, I've really gotten into cycling. I living in Minnesota, I can't be outside on my road bike as much as I would like, because
Oh sure.
there's a few months where there's this thing called snow. Um,
Most of them.
yeah. Well, and just, the reality of a busy schedule, like this morning, I mean, it was a beautiful morning. I would have loved nothing else to get on my bike and go for an hour ride, but that just wasn't reality. So I hopped on my Peloton and did a quick 20 minutes, because that's what the schedule allowed. But that is something that I have found that, man, it's probably been a routine I've gotten in myself in for probably the past, like, at least 8 years, I'd say, of
Wow.
getting up in the morning, and, like, the alarm goes off early. There's a lot of mornings where that alarm is 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I lay in bed, I'm like, it would be nicer to sleep, but I also remind myself I'm always happier when I get up. And, because it's, for me, it's having a couple minutes to myself, because everyone's still sleeping, except for my dog, who, just needs a few head scratches and then he goes and lays back down. But it tends to be my time, having a little bit of time to myself. And, I get my exercise in. It makes me feel better. It energizes me for the rest of the day. Um, it- and that really has been, I've realized, important element for me, at least, in, you know, keeping myself charged, and in a good place mentally. I mean, and it's not always perfect. Um, and there's been mornings where I have chosen to sleep in, but like I said, I've quickly learned where I'm just I am a better I'm a better mom, I'm a better coworker, I'm a better wife,
Yeah.
when I make sure that I'm making some time for me.
Yeah.
And for me, that's been, exercising, and yeah, when I can get out on the weekends and do those longer rides, like, I'm in my happy place.
Mhm. Yeah, I love it. Well, I mean, it's essential, right? I mean, to bring it back to the the opening thing, right? It's a human process, and we're just better humans when you make sure that you have an hour for
Yeah.
yourself every day, right? That you can just go to work on you, whatever that looks like for every individual
Yep.
that may be listening to this or watching. So, all right, Emily, this has been really cool and really fun. And I think just a little masterclass in intentional leadership from you. So appreciate you being on. Any last thoughts or suggestions that you'd throw out for the listeners?
I would say, just be true to yourself. And that's part of getting back to being human, is, to your point earlier, you know, you're only you. And if you've ever tried to be anybody else, it probably hasn't really gone well. So identifying, what your strengths are, and how you can excel, and how you can use that to help others, I think, is the best way you can be an intentional leader. And, you know, just remember that, everyone's probably trying their best. And if you can help them be their best, you're both going to win.
I love it. That's a great way to leave it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure talking with you today.
Yeah, this has been great.